Hello and welcome to Unleashed. I'm your host, Will Bachman, and I'm delighted to be here today with an Umbrex member, Sandor Marton, who is a McKinsey alum, and he's also the co-founder of Chronos Insights. And they have built an AI tool, the AI Research Companion, that I thought worth sharing. I wanted to hear more about it. And they actually have some spots available for some early testers. Will they'll give you access at no charge if you agree to provide some feedback to the tool. So if you are interested in that, I want to announce just up front, just send an email to unleashed@umbrex.com and say you'd like to be a tester, include your LinkedIn URL. And if we have spots left, we'll get you accommodated there. Sandor, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Will. I really appreciate it. Looking forward to the chat.
Great. You and I are here on a video conference, so I'm seeing your screen. We're going to publish just the audio, but we will publish some screenshots on the Umbrex website. So go to umbrex.com/unleashed if you want to see some of the screenshots from today. But to make it easier to listen to, we're just going to publish the audio. So Sandor, you're sharing your screen here. Tell us first, just give us a big picture overview of Chronos Insights and the tool that you've built.
Yeah, so the big picture story is I've been doing growth strategy and commercial strategy into sales operations work now, along with some due diligence work for going back to McKinsey, and then certainly for the last 4 years as a independent consultant. And it always struck me that so much of that sort of work is made up of developing the foundational understanding of the industry, the market, the competitive landscape, and so on. It's necessary work. It's a lot of work. And the problem that we run into as small firm or independent practitioners is we simply don't have the team sizes to throw bodies at that problem. And at least in my experience, in my practice, this became a limiting factor in my ability to take on projects sometimes. And because all of us face this feast-famine cycle in our practices where we'll get lots of projects being thrown at us that we can't handle, to, in downtimes, potentially zero projects, being able to capitalize on those feast periods is really important. And so I partnered up with Matt Jones and Dustin Chrysler to help develop a AI-powered solution for this. Matt is a business executive and consultant who has developed a specialty in business applications for generative AI. And Dustin is a former Amazon technology leader and has scaled up large full-stack customer-facing solutions. And so it felt like we had a really good team to get after this problem. And so we partnered up and first went after the market and competitive landscape problem. And to do that, it struck us that, ChatGPT is out of the box, is a people-pleasing prompt. It wants to make you happy. And this tends to result in ChatGPT making mistakes, trying to make you happy, even creating hallucinations. And so we wanted to create agent chains that would leverage the ChatGPT large language model, but with a different approach. And so this is a specialized prompt leveraging tools and a software framework to attack this specific type of research. And we're using both what's called neural search and keyword search to get to better, more complete, more accurate, and sourced research solutions than you get with ChatGPT out of the box. That was the ambition. And so we went and first built these agents without this platform that Will is currently looking at. And I was running old projects with these agents first to test against a known quantity. And then I was using it on live projects to see what the output looked like. And I was saving about 75% of my research time using the platform. We will all call out here that the AI is not going to be a fire and forget solution. You will need to check and review what it produces, just like you would if you hired an analyst or an associate to do this work the old-fashioned way. So there's still work to do, but it is a heck of a lot faster to reflect, revise, review, and so on than it is to create from whole cloth. So that's kind of the background of this thing.
So it's kind of a wrapper on ChatGPT. In terms of, is there any access to like proprietary databases, or is it, primarily using agents and, some sophisticated prompts on the ChatGPT as is?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So this alpha version is leveraging publicly available information like you just referenced. We have engineering resources and can absolutely build a solution that would tap into proprietary, private, or licensed resources as well, or even direct the agent to publicly available sources, but specific ones that are really important to include. We just need the direction from a user on what that would look like. And actually, there's a large Fortune 100 company that is going to bring us on to build something like that for their internal research team, where we will combine ARC with their internal licensed research and data, which should be
Okay.
very interesting.
So right now it's not, you haven't like licensed Crunchbase or PitchBook or Capital IQ or stuff like that.
Not yet. We want to first make sure that this base case is optimized somewhat. Then we want to figure out the right features to add onto it. One set of which is what you just outlined would be great to add. We also need to understand specifically what a hypothetical user base would want out of that. So if most of the demand is in kind of that due diligence space, then what you're saying makes a ton of sense as a first priority. There's other things to build too. For example, we would love to go build an interview finder tool that plugs into a LinkedIn API and on day one gives you thousands of potential expert interviews to get after, finds it automatically on its own with your direction, actually conducts the initial outreach to those people. Later in that interview cycle, once you do the interviews, you dump the transcripts into that tool, summarizes the insights from those interviews. And then the coolest part would be another feature that would combine the ARC insights and research with the primary research expert interview summaries to create composite self-referencing insights, which is kind of what you start to get into like the associate level thinking and work. That would be a really cool feature to build as well.
All right. Let's talk about what you've built so far. So walk me through how to use the product. It sounds like it's kind of for that initial market landscape where you're trying to get smart on an industry. Walk me through how to use the tool and what sort of outputs it generates.
Yeah, great. So we have a very simple UI currently. We have 5 landing pages for a user to look at. This first one we're looking at is called Project Overview. It's really directions for a user on what all the other tabs do. And there are 4 activity areas. The first is, what is your research statement of work? What are you trying to get out of the AI? This is kind of what you would give to an analyst or a junior associate on your team if you were having them do this work for you. Hey, Sandor, I need you to understand the state of play in the U.S. Fashion market. I need to understand it by channel, by segment, and so on. So that's the research statement of work. Next is the research plan. Once you provide that statement of work, ARC will create a research plan for you. What's neat about this is you can therefore write a pretty complex and detailed research attack plan. And instead of having to wrestle with a ChatGPT prompt and figure out how many prompts do I need? How do I bucket these prompts? Oh no, like this particular prompt kicked back the wrong output. I got to re-engineer it and so on. ARC will create discrete task prompts for each one of the topics within your statement of work. And that can get quite quite complex and pretty thorough, which we'll demonstrate here in a moment. Next, there's a research tab. So that is taking your research plan and actually running the research for each one of those tasks. And then finally, there's a research summary tab where it'll look back on all of the output that was just produced, which could be a heck of a lot of material, as you might imagine, and it will summarize it for you. So those are the pieces. And what I'd like to do now is kind of walk through how that works in practice.
Okay, great. Yeah, sure, let's do it.
So, all right. So let's first look at a Word document, right? So if you came to me and said, Sandor, like your job on this project is to help us understand the current state of play in full price fashion, something near and dear to my heart as a ex-Nordstrom strategy guy and so on, and having spent time in Burlington stores, I might write a document like this, which breaks out topics into understanding the market by channel, trying to understand size, growth rates, threats that it's facing, get some sort of AI assessment of how this market may evolve over the next few years, drivers of store performance, e-commerce performance, emerging technology, how might AI play a role? There's also another big topic around the assortment itself. So how do I think about different product divisions, shoes, formal wear, dresses, and so on? Again, I would want to list out for my engagement manager or my project leader these same elements around market sizing and growth rates and threats and so on. And then my boss in this hypothetical scenario, which having done it many times on various strategy teams as a junior person, I'm going to get asked to provide competitor profiling. And usually we already have a sense of who those competitors are. Sometimes I need to go generate other ones. Here in this particular case, I've laid out 10 full price e-commerce and blended digital physical players. They're all pretty dominant in the space. Nordstrom, Macy's, Gap, ASOS is on here. Amazon fashion, much to my chagrin, we were fighting the launch of this back in 2014, if I recall. And then for each competitor, I need to define with my manager what I want to research. And so typical things on this sort of a competitor analysis would be revenue and 3-year growth rate, and how's that broken up across channels and segments, big picture things like what geos they're in, recent news, and so on. One neat thing, by the way, about defining your research like this, the types of questions that you'll ask, either on the market landscape section or here in the competitive profile section, varies pretty dramatically based on the problem that you're trying to solve. So fashion retail looks like this. But if, for example, I was interested in, investing in the emerging nuclear power technology space, which is a body of research that I did for someone here last year, my competitor questions are actually quite a bit different. I'm very interested there about like regulatory problems or the state of their technology. How mature is it? How long have they been around? Like if they've been around for 10 years and haven't gone anywhere, that's sort of a bad indicator. So this gives you a lot of flexibility in how you approach the problem, which I found pretty valuable. So then you might say, okay, Sandor, that's great and all. How do I get it into your platform? So it's pretty simple. You literally just copy and paste that Word document into this research statement of work tab. That is straight copy and paste. And Will, as you can see, I've done zero formatting. So even the bullet points are actually left in here. This looks like one giant run-on sentence. The AI doesn't care. A little harder for me to read, but the AI will be able to parse this and will be able to see the formatting and make it work. So it's pretty fast and convenient. All the user has to do really is worry about organizing it in the original source material, the Word doc, the email, whatever it is, so that they can kind of follow the story.
Okay.
So once you do that, you simply hit this generate plan yellow icon, and that will produce that research plan I was talking about. For what I just wrote, having run this a couple times, this is about a 90-second exercise.
Okay.
For the platform to run. So, relatively quickly. The first section that we're seeing here is just laying out the state of play around competitors, the types of questions to ask. And then it's going to dive deep into the research tasks. So there's a market landscape body of research here, and it takes that big, long run-on sentence and creates discrete task prompts for each topic. And what's fun about this is if I decide that I don't like the way that it was translated, or I just flat out want to change how I'm thinking about the research, I can simply click this edit button, and now it's a free-form text edit. And I can add a line, I can text edit any of these tasks easily. And you can see how the thing that we wrote turned into a heck of a lot of tasks. I mean,
Let's scroll up to the top. Let's just go through this a little bit. Just scroll up to the top of this. This is super detailed. It looks like it's 3 or 4 pages of stuff. So it'll have at the top, it has subsection, it gives you the industry, full price fashion retail. Talks about and then there's a section on industry subsegments. And then it breaks it out into physical stores and e-commerce. And that makes logical sense to me. It says the top geo is United States. And then sub-geos, there's an option for that, but it says none provided. Okay, so we're looking at the United States. Then it says statement of work competitors. And it lists 8 or 9, Nordstrom, Macy's, Gap, etc. I forget, was that list in the original statement of work?
Yeah, so what we're looking at here is all of the stuff my statement of work is giving the AI to work with. That's this section, right? And then it's going to take this and it's going to create new stuff for us. But this is confirming, hey, this is what you gave me as the starting details to work with.
So this is putting into a structure that insert into a formal structure, the more free text version that we put into the statement of work. So it lists out what were the other segments, what were the segmentation questions, like how are sales channel segments defined within the full price fashion industry. And then we go down into the market landscape section. Is this section still replaying what we provided? Okay.
So now what ARC is doing is it's saying, okay, that previous bit that all said detail, that's the stuff you gave me. Now let me tell you how I would approach this research problem. Okay. And I'm organizing it by major research category, of which I think we'll end up with 3 in the end. And then for each major research category, a subsection, and then within that subsection, the actual prompt research tasks that the agent will go execute for you.
Very interesting. Okay. I mean, this would not be a bad thing to do, even if you were going to do this stuff manually, right? To break it down in this nice way. It's similar to the McKinsey problem-solving approach of, it's almost like an issue tree or hypothesis. It's not quite a hypothesis tree because I don't see hypotheses, but it's almost like an issue tree. So we have section market landscape, and within that we have subsection market overview. We have customer detail. We have market detail. If you can keep, and then for physical stores, market detail for e-commerce, market detail for product divisions, and then competitor landscape. So that's the next major section, right?
Right.
Competitor list, and then competitor profiles. And then it has a competitor profile for each one. So there's a whole section just on Nordstrom with a set of tasks. Some of the tasks say R and some say C. What's the difference between those?
Some of these are reasoning model approach, and some of these are simply going and like grabbing information. So it's just communicating to us what type of task it is. For the user, it's not going to really make any difference.
Okay. So we have competitor profile, and as a section for each of the competitors that you had listed, Macy's, Nordstrom, Gap. Okay, let's keep scrolling down. And then Urban Outfitters, ASOS, etc. So we keep scrolling through that section. And then, okay, Amazon Fashion, Kohl's. Okay. And then additional competitors. Identify and profile additional U.S. full-price fashion competitors to reach a total of 20. Okay, so we'd fill out the list with anything else. And then the next major section is key trends and developments. Okay. So with recent developments, market outlook, Makes sense. Okay, let's keep scrolling. See what other
That's
kinds.
it.
Okay, that's it. All right.
Yeah.
So then it's developed individual task level things like for Amazon, identify threats that Amazon fashion faces, or for Kohl's, capture Kohl's employee count and geography served. That would be more of a capture type task instead of a
Yeah.
reasoning task.
Yeah.
Or summarize recent news developments for Kohl's. That would be a task that you could assign to your AI or assign to your human business analyst to go and search the news. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Got it. Okay, so it's built out this research plan, structuring everything into sections, subsections, and specific task level assignments.
Yeah. And so you can see this is a lot of work. Again, having done this, I'm sure we all have done a version of this many times at the firm on our own in-house strategy teams.
Mhm.
This is a very complete version of this body of work.
Yeah.
Working on my own, it would take me multiple weeks to do all this work. I would have to Google 10Ks. I'd have to Google,
Mhm.
Mintel reports, Passport, Guide Point, pick your poison of syndicated research, and so on. I'd have to go to company websites in order to pull all this together. So then I can publish this, and I'm just going to jump over to my other tab, having already done it, and I end up with a research tab now that has all of those tasks bucketed into these three big research topics off to the left. So the market landscape, full price fashion retail, competitor landscape, and then key developments are our three major research topics. And then when you click on one of these major topics in the field off to the left, it zooms into in the main body of this page, the task list. If we click on, and actually, let me just hop back to the other page really quick. We'll publish this. Whenever it first loads this, none of the research is done. I think if I recall on this particular project, there's 72 discrete. Yeah, it's actually 107 here. I've actually published it in my other tab. There's 107 tasks to run, which
Wow.
is a heck of a lot, right?
Yeah.
And as you can see here, I just have my task. I can still do a review here, and before I run it, I can edit, clicking on these blue pen icons. I can edit tasks here as well. I can also pick what large language model I want to use. Currently, the default is set to 4.0 mini. I will tell you from lots of experience now, I want 04 mini reasoning will actually give me better answers. And
Oh.
it's taken me some playing in order to kind of learn that. We're actually going to set the default to the platform to be 04 mini versus 4.0.
Now with just the recent launch of ChatGPT 5, does that change that answer at all, or still
So
stick
we
with?
are we are right now learning how good 5 is.
Okay.
I think our preliminary assessment is it's not as good as 04, we think, in terms of this application, but we're still playing with it. It's also new, which means they're going to iterate on it a bunch.
Hmm.
And so my answer is probably going to change as they make it better and better. Right now, I feel most comfortable running 04 mini just because I've been using it and I kind of know it's sort of known quantity for me. But I'll have a better answer for that over the next month or
Okay.
so. We kind of play with 5.
And when you're using the more consumer version of ChatGPT, it now, if you have a pro, it doesn't give you the option. It just, you can have 5, you can use 5 Thinking or 5 Pro. But I guess you're using the API, so that you can that still allows you to select which specific model you want to be tapping into.
Yes, that's exactly correct. We will start playing around with 5 and we just want to feel comfortable with what it does for us to
Uh-huh.
make sure that we're not downgrading ourselves prematurely. And
And
by the
then
way,
so it lets you run a subsection, the whole section, or the whole project. You can choose which part you want to run.
you can run this entire thing concurrently. Now, when I was playing with this yesterday, I could run all of this concurrently and it ran in 5 minutes.
Wow. Okay, that's pretty quick.
It's pretty quick. One super important call out here. If you're using 04 mini and you run just one of these prompts, it can take up to 2 minutes to run just one of it by itself. So we've engineered a concurrent task processing in this platform that is a pretty massive unlock. Otherwise, you would have to have 102 tabs open running all these prompts kind of at the same time in order to get anywhere close to how fast we do it.
All right. Okay, cool. Yeah, and just order of magnitude. I guess when you're using the API, you're paying for, tokens. What does that cost you to run like 107 queries?
It first of all depends on your model. So there are more expensive models and less expensive models, and that those price points can vary by 2, 3, 4x depending on the model you're using. Generally, running something like this, the cost is on the order of dollars, single digit. So it's not super expensive to run the queries. The higher end models, this can get a lot more pricey. And of course, the more research that you're running, the more pricey it is as well.
Oh, okay, cool. So let's take a look. It sounds like you've already run it. Let's look at the output.
Yeah, so if I run all at once, 5 minutes later, I would get something that looks like this. And now you'll see for each of my tasks, I have this little caret off to the left where I can expand the research. If I click on that, I get the ARC answer to that specific task with citations that I can click on. So,
Uh-huh.
if I scroll down to something a little more interesting, this is just listing out the physical stores and online stores. But if I go to something like total addressable market, I've got two different sources here for the U.S. apparel market size. And if I, click on, I guess it's closed for today. It was not closed yesterday. If I click on this one, it'll take me to the abstract so I can actually check my sources. A call out, just like on a real project with a real team, I may come back to you as your associate and quote a market size, and you may say, hey, you know what, that does not comport with my experience or other sources that I'm aware of. And then there's a very fair discussion about what's the right source to go use. We can rerun this using a different approach. You can actually direct the AI to a different source if you would prefer. But this does give you a very helpful starting point with backed up sourcing. The other thing that one of the errors that I used to run into about a year ago when we were doing this was sometimes the AI would give me a number and it would tell me this is a US number, and then you click on it and it's actually a North American report, including Canada. Sometimes it would even be so egregious as to give me an EU number. We have trained the AI not to do that, and so those errors have been kind of scrubbed out of this thing. So this is very interesting because now you can kind of go through here task by task and review the output and get a sense of it. The other neat thing about this is in the upper right-hand corner, you can export this to a Word doc,
All right.
which then you can share with the team and then review. As you may have already observed, Will, this is, 107 tasks. This is a heck of a lot of material to go through. There's no doubt about that. And so we created a research summary feature, which I'll show here in a moment.
Great. Let's take a look at that.
But before we jump to that, one last thing on this page that I want to call out. You can rerun tasks. So if you see these little green locks, you can unlock a task and then change the research task with your blue edit icon and then rerun just that task. So this allows you to run the whole thing and decide that you just want to fix one or two tasks or edit them in some way. You can unlock that area, play with it, rerun just that section, and don't have to wait the full 5 minutes to run everything again.
Okay, very cool. And then you can go to the research summary and you can export the whole thing as a Word doc as well.
That's right. And so on this research summary tab, just that market landscape section has now been shrunk down to what looks to me like 4 or 5 pages, 3 to 5 pages. And it is just taking the most sort of biggest impact salient points from that massive market landscape section. Again, same organizational format off in that left field. I can move between summaries. Remember, I had 3 major sections. I have my market landscape section, my competitor landscape section, then key developments. Each one has its own summary place that you can go. So if I just want a really quick story on Nordstrom, Macy's, Gap, and so on my competitor landscape page, here we go. And it's talking about its core capabilities. It's FY24 net sales for Nordstrom, 15 billion. I really enjoy this 36% digital sales story that they're describing there. I find that interesting. It's giving Nordstrom's margin also very interesting. And so at a quick glance, I can get a sense of my competitor view without having to sift through all 107 tasks on the previous page.
Will expose my ignorance here. When you have a button that says export doc and then one that says export markdown, what does the export markdown do?
So these are the edits that you've made to it, which I don't have any here.
The markdown. Okay, that's not like a HTML version or something like that. That's the markdown would be like edits that you've made.
I believe so. Yeah. Yes, I believe
All right.
that's right.
All right, cool. All right. So I understand how this could be used. The tool that you've described goes through and will do like a market landscape, or that's the use case you've shown me. Are there other key use cases right now? Like if you said you just wanted a company overview, let's say, or if you wanted something more specific, like, hey, we're trying to understand in this specific market, what's the typical kind of procurement cycle and sales cycle or something like that in a specific market, and not just the generic complete give me the full market overview. Is that the main use case, or is there sort of set up for other use cases?
You can absolutely do different research topics like you just outlined. I did a project for a friend of mine on the plastics injection molding industry that dived into things like what's the sales cycle in this space? What are the threats that it's facing? How do I think about overseas competition when a potential client is selecting a plastics injection molding supplier? What are the criteria it tends to use to make that selection?
Mm-hmm.
So because that research statement of work panel is a free form area, you can create all kinds of different questions to go explore. That research that I just outlined on the plastics injection molding space was really interesting because it got to things like, hey, look, this is a 12 to 24-month sales cycle to ramp up a production, and therefore it's pretty hard to drive fast growth. And we even got into being able to segment client industries by ease of entry into that space versus value of being in that space, which was super valuable for my buddy. So there are lots of ways to use the tool to do research. Really anything that's about an industry or a specific company or a basket of companies or a geo that one needs to understand, one can use this for. We don't have tools yet around developing primary research, which we'd like to get into. We would also love to start thinking about sourcing and developing capabilities that support valuation and diligence type work. That's something sort of on our horizon as well. And then, as you alluded to at the outset, there is something very interesting around how do we build tools that allow one to tap into proprietary or licensed material and then incorporate that into the research, and then create composite insights based on that.
Very cool. So let's share again the website. If people want to go check this out, what's the website to go to?
Super simple, www.chronosinsights.com. There's a tab at the top there where you can either contact us directly or you can sign up for the wait list for this tool, and then Will gave you the link to the Umbrex version of that as well. We need users. We need input. It's free. We need help. We want this to be a useful, powerful tool. I will tell you that my co-founders and I are super proud of this thing, like most parents are. We need people to help us have a clear-eyed view of our new child so we can help our child be a successful grown-up later.
Right, fantastic. So we'll include that link in the show notes. And if you're interested in getting access at no charge as a trial user, you can just shoot me a note at unleashed@umbrex.com. All right, Sandor, thank you so much for spending time today. Congrats on what you built so far. And like I said, we'll include those links in the show notes.
Hey, Will, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate the opportunity to come here.